Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my channel. This is Tanush, and today we'll be discussing about the transit of Venus into the sign of Aries, which has happened yesterday. That is on 23rd May 2022, and Venus will be staying in the sign of Aries till 17th June. So it's a short stay, but it has its own significance, right? So we'll be discussing about that, and I'll just touch base a little bit about what would be the results of this transit, so that there'll be a kind of input to you to plan things accordingly, right? So we all know what Venus represents. So Venus represents relationships, right? Love, romance, enjoying life, right? It's a peace loving planet, right? So when this Venus and right now at least till 22nd of May, Venus was in the sign of exaltation in the sign of Pisces, right? And now when Venus has transited into the sign of Aries, what happens is, first of all, Venus is coming out of its state of exaltation, and it's not so happy, and Venus represents a water element, and now Venus is entering into the fire element of Aries. So this is a Gandhanta point. So whenever a planet transits from water sign into the fire sign, that is known as a Gandhanta point, and it implies unfolding of a lot of karma related to that specific planet and houses, right? But more than that, because Venus is basically a water element, and now it is entering into the sign of Aries, which represents fire, right? So what happens, when fire and water they meet? It's like steam is generated. So it's not going to be a very easy transit for Venus, right? For the reasons which I stated. One is it is coming out of its sign of exaltation. Second, it has already passed through the Gandhanta point, and now it is in the element of fire, where it is quite uncomfortable. Now, to add to it, there is Rahu sitting in the Aries, which is very happy to be with Venus, because Rahu in one way it represents most of the qualities of Venus, and that is the reason Rahu is exalted, said to be exalted in the sign of Venus, which is Taurus, right? So Rahu represents all the material desires, trying to fulfill the material desires, and enjoying life. And Rahu is never satisfied with how much ever it gets, right? So it's never satisfied, it always wants more. So there is no limit for the demands of Rahu. And when this Rahu meets with its friend Venus, right, it tries to amplify the properties of Venus, wherein a person is not at all satisfied with the aspects of Venus which Venus kind of holds in our particular horoscope, right? So whichever houses Venus holds, those particular aspects will be activated, and the person feels quite unsatisfied and aggressive. So when Rahu and Venus meets, it's like a person will have a lot of energy and desire to fulfill the wants, and the person is never satisfied, how much ever the person gets, right? Now another important point is, this is happening in the sign of Aries, and Aries is a fiery sign, and it's a very dominant sign because it is ruled by Mars, and it is a Mool Trikon sign of Mars. And in one way, it also represents the qualities of Mars, which is aggressiveness, demanding. It's like a soldier who never wants to think but go out on the war field and achieve things, right? So it doesn't like to think, it just wants to achieve the things which it desires. So when all this combination happens, like Rahu in the sign of Mars, it inherits the properties of Mars, because wherever Rahu sits, it kind of tries to adapt to that particular sign. And because Rahu also represents material things, and it's in the sign of Mars, so its tendency to actually enjoy or achieve things, it increases. So the passion increases, And to add to that, when Venus, which represents a material element, comes into that sign, there is no limit to a person's desire. And what happens is that Venus, the houses which Venus owns, those are the houses which will get affected. And Venus Rahu sitting in the sign of Aries, the aspect, the house exactly opposite to that, which is nothing but Libra, right? And Libra represents relationships. So this particular conjunction is going to impact relationships. And to add to that, Saturn sitting in the sign of Aquarius would be aspecting both Rahu and Venus with its third aspect. And the third aspect of Saturn tries to limit things, whereas Rahu and along with Venus, it tries to expand things, meaning there is no boundary for its satisfaction. It always wants more, whereas Saturn is curbing this mentality and trying to build boundaries. So a lot of dissatisfaction, and we can say that Venus is not in a very good spot, because Venus is a very soft planet, and it is a very emotional planet, and this quality of this emotional element of Venus is now burned in the sign of Aries. So let us see how this this transit and conjunction is going to impact each one of us very briefly, right? So now Aries, now Venus is getting into your Rashi in your Lagna, right? So what would happen is Rahu and Venus in the first house. So Rahu has already kind of boosted your ego, and you are right now very high, because sign of Aries, your Aries people are quite dominant, and Rahu has added to that. And now when Venus comes, there is no limit for desires to be satisfied. So when Rahu and Venus they aspect the opposite house, which is the seventh house of your marriage, spouse, and relationships, your tendency would be, you'll be expecting more from your marriage or your business contract, or whatever that house represents. So your expectation with your spouse, with your partner, increases multifold, and this causes lot of dissatisfaction in the marriage or in the relationship, right? And it's a short transit, so my advice would be, just restrain and try to understand that this is a very short period, and then Venus is going to get into its own house of Taurus, where Venus would be very comfortable on 17th of June, right? So it's a short transit. Understand that this disturbance is going to come, and try to have restraint, right? So restrain on your thoughts, on your desires, right? You have to restrain, otherwise there will be a lot of issues. It will damage a lot of things in your marriage, or in your partnership, or in your relationship, right? Now Venus also holds the second house, so which means that you will also try to dominate your family. So you have to be a little careful on that front, and be very careful with your savings. If you have to invest your money somewhere, this is not the right time. Just wait for Venus to come into its own sign of Taurus in the second house, and then you can plan for investments, and those investments would be quite fruitful. So any investment done during this period would not yield you good results, and probably your money might also be blocked, right? Now coming to Taurus, Venus is transiting into your 12th house, where already Rahu is placed, right? And Rahu is already giving you a lot of expenses, and Venus coming there would add to your expenses. So be very careful with spendings. I mean, there are few things which we cannot avoid, like sudden repairs, or probably your car will break down, or some sort of issues are completely out of our control. But few things like spending on luxury, spending on travel, which would happen, right? So because it's a 12th house, you will have the desire to travel, and you will put in a lot of money to travel and to kind of enjoy your travel, right? So you need to curb this tendency, otherwise the expenses would be quite exponential, and they will impact your savings for sure, right? And Venus also holds your 6th house. Now the problem would be 6th house represents all sorts of issues, impediments, hindrances, enemies, also diseases, right? So if during this time, if you don't restrain, then your relationship with your spouse is going to get impacted, because Libra is the natural seventh house, right? And be very careful with your spendings. Don't go for any loan. If at all you have to go for any loan, or you need to borrow some money for someone, this is not the right time. Just wait for Venus transit out of the sign of Aries, right? Now for Gemini friends, Venus is transiting into your 11th house, and in general Venus does very good in the 11th house, right? And Rahu is also placed there. Now this conjunction of Rahu and Venus would increase the tendency to gain money, right? So which is kind of okay, but don't actually push yourself too hard. But you can work on different ideas or different ways of gaining money. So this is a time where you'll actually try to seek what are the different other routes through which I can actually earn money, which is very good, right? Now you'll have dissatisfaction from your current job or your business, and it might give you a feeling that you're not getting the returns in proportion to the hard work which you are putting in. So again, it's a temporary one. Don't worry much about it. Now people who are involved in share market, it's going to be a wonderful time, because Venus is the lord of your 5th house, and Venus is sitting in the 11th house of gains along with Rahu, aspecting your 5th house. So if you are into share market and speculation, then you can intelligently try to invest in proper shares, and they'll surely give you good returns during this period. And because it is aspecting at the 5th house also represents creativity. It also represents romance, also artistic things. So these things would increase, right? And it is very good transit, especially for people who are in cinema field. It's going to be a very good one. So don't be too demanding and aggressive towards your partner. That is the only thing I would say. And be careful with your spendings. Your network circle would be very good, and you'll enjoy your time with your network circle. Again, don't spend too much, right, on comforts and travels. Now coming to Cancer, this transit of Venus is happening in your 10th house, right? And this conjunction of Venus and Rahu is in the 10th house, and Venus holds 4th and 11th house. Venus is the owner of 4th and 11th house, two very good houses for you, right? Now this conjunction will bring in a little bit of dissatisfaction on the job front. So it might give you a feeling that you're not very comfortable in this current job, and you might think of changing your job. But again, this is not the right time. You'll have to wait for Venus to transit to your 11th house, and then you can plan for those things if at all you want to plan. Or if it is a temporary phase, then it's going to fade away. So don't be very serious about it. Just wait till Venus transits into the sign of Taurus, right? Now Rahu and Venus sitting in the 10th house are aspecting the 4th house. So be very careful with your dealings with your mother. You might be little aggressive towards your mother, and because Ketu is already placed there, so it might actually create lot of relationship issues with your mother. So you have to be careful with that, and even in general with people at your home, right? So that is one advice I would give you. Now you might be a little bit more demanding with your network circle, and you might get a feeling that even though I have so many friends and family members, they are not coming to my help when I need them. So so it's because of the planetary placement. Just wait for some time, and things would ease away again. Now coming to Leo, Venus is going to transit into your 9th house, and Rahu Venus conjunction is going to happen in your 9th house, and Venus holds the 3rd and the 10th house, right? So during this period you will get an desire to travel. So the travel can be a domestic travel to short distance, or even international travel. So you'll get that intense desire to travel, right? But unless and until it is very essential, I would suggest you not to travel, because again the expenses would be too high if you take to travel. Now your communication during this time will be little aggressive. So Rahu would push you to communicate aggressively. So be very, very careful, especially when you are interacting with your younger siblings and your friends, friends and family. So you have to be very careful not to be very rash or very dominating, otherwise it will impact your relationship, right? Because Libra is the house of relationship, and it's going to impact that house very badly, right? And because Venus also rules your 10th house, right? So you might be quite dissatisfied with things happening, in your job or in your business. So don't worry much, because once Venus transits into your 10th house in its own sign, that transit is going to be really wonderful for you. It's going to be very good from the career and business perspective. So it's a temporary phase. Just overlook things which might seem negative, right? Now for Virgo ascendants, it's a little tricky transit, because this transit is happening into your 8th house, where Rahu is already placed, right? So now Rahu and Venus would be in your 8th house, and Venus is the lord of your 2nd and 9th house. So what would happen? You can expect sudden events which might actually deplete your savings, meaning you might incur some expenses, or you might plan to invest in certain certain organizations or shares, or somewhere where you can incur heavy losses. So be very careful on that front. And second is, be careful with your dealings with your spouse. And this conjunction in the 8th house would specifically give you desire to have certain secret affairs. So if at all you are into it, or if you're planning to get into it, don't do that, because one, it's not moral. Second is, there are chances that you might be caught, right? So the secret tendency might be actually exposed. So you have to be very careful on that front, right? And you can also expect some small accidents or some small injuries during this period. Now Libra, this transit is happening in your 7th house, right? So exactly opposite your ascendant, it's happening in the 7th house. So Rahu is already sitting in your 7th house, creating dissatisfaction in your marriage or in your relationship, or in your business partnership. Now to add to that, Venus has come here. Now what is going to happen is, it will create a lot of dissatisfaction in your marriage or in your relationship, right? And it will also give you a tendency that I'm not happy with this marriage or with this relationship, let me go on, let me move on, right? And if at all you're getting this feeling, so you already might have facing these issues, or you might have getting these thoughts, because Rahu is sitting there giving those thoughts. And when Venus comes, these thoughts would actually intensify. So my suggestion would be, just overlook and wait till Venus transits out of Aries. Otherwise, any decision you might take during this period would impact you very badly, and that decision would not be the right one, because that would be under the influence of Rahu and Venus, and Saturn aspecting this conjunction, right? So don't jump the gun, as they say, or don't come to any conclusion or take any decision. Just wait for some time and see how things would go, right? So after that, things would be much better. You will get a lot of clarity about how things would be in the future, and then you can probably take a call, but not during this period, right? Now for Scorpio ascendants, this transit of Venus is happening in the 6th house, and Venus is the lord of your 7th and 12th house. So your health might be impacted, because Venus is a Maraka planet for you. It's a lord of the 7th house, as well as the 12th house of expenses, right? So during this period, you will have to be little careful with your, again, relationship with your spouse, because the lord of 7th house is now in the 6th house, along with Rahu. So Rahu is quite good there, because it's one of the Upachaya houses, and Rahu does very well there. But when Venus comes there, it actually again creates dissatisfaction. It not only does that, you might get a feeling that my spouse or my partner is an enemy of me, right? This conjunction will do that. Venus in the 6th house along with Rahu will give you that tendency, right? So again, don't get into this trap. Wait for some time till Venus transits into your 7th house, and then things would settle down. It would be much better, right? Expenses might be more. Don't go for any sort of loans or debts during this period, otherwise you will end up paying it for a long period, right? So you will not be able to close those loans or those debts in a short period. It will go on for a long time, and you will have to suffer a lot, right? Incur a lot of losses. So don't plan for that. Be little careful with your enemies. Rahu is already there, but you have to be little careful with your enemies, because they'll be very active during this period. Now coming to Sagittarius ascendant, this transit of Venus is happening in your 5th house, right? So Venus likes to be in the 5th house. Rahu is already placed there, and Venus likes to be in the 5th house. 5th house is, like we discussed, house of creativity. It is the Purva Punya Bhava. It is also known as Purva Punya Bhava. It is the house of acting, the house of gains one way, house of education. Again, it shows artists, cinema actors. So many good things are shown by the 5th house. And Venus is kind of okay being in the 5th house. It's actually very happy. So during this conjunction of Rahu and Venus, if you have this, or if you are in the profession of acting, cinema, music, then you can actually enhance your skills, right? So it will give you the impetus to actually enhance your skills, and it is for the betterment. So you can actually go for that. You can plan for that. If you are into acting field, then this conjunction will give you very good roles to play. A very good break. Which will have a very good effect. And if you are into share market, then certainly this would be a good one. But again, you will have to be a little careful with your investments where you are investing. So if you are sure and if you are careful, then you will yield very good returns during this period. And don't be too demanding with your children, because this Rahu and Venus conjunction will actually drive you there. So don't be too demanding, or try to make your children learn new things, and don't make them learn everything, because it generally gives that feeling that my children has to learn all the things. So be very careful what they learn, check what they are interested in, and then you can probably encourage that particular field. Now coming to Capricorn, this transit of Venus is happening in the 4th house, and Venus is a Yoga Karaka planet for that. For Capricorn ascendant, right? Venus is also has a very good direction strength in the 4th house, but again, because it's with Rahu, and it's in a fiery sign, so this conjunction will have its own impact. So what would happen is you would dominate more at home with your mother, with your husband or wife, with your children. So that dominating attitude, that demanding attitude would be there, and you need to curb that attitude, otherwise you might hurt people, right? And you can focus this energy on your 10th house, because opposite to 4th house is 10th house. So you can use the same energy to learn new things or put in efforts to achieve something. Then it would be a good one for you. And Venus is also Lord of your 10th house, right? So obviously then it will do very good for you if your focus moves from the house front to the career front. Then it will actually do tremendously good for you. So Venus is a Yokaraka planet. It will not actually damage much for you. It's also Lord of your 5th house. So if you have any desires to learn new things, new field, new domain, new technology, then you can actually start planning during this period, because the next transit would actually help you to achieve those goals, right? So you can plan for your goals, and then next month, once the Venus transits, you can implement those, and you'll have a very good time. Now for Aquarius, this transit is happening in the third house, and the Rahu and Venus conjunction is in the third house, right? So Rahu is very comfortable being in the third house. It is one of the Upachaya houses, and Venus is also quite comfortable. Now the only thing which you have to look is your speech and your communication. Don't be too harsh, right? Because it's directly sitting in the home of communication and your younger siblings. So don't be too harsh in your speech. Don't have differences with your younger sibling. And if you had planned for something new, you can actually start working in that direction. And if you are a writer or publisher, or if you are very active making videos and everything, media, so then this period is going to be actually very fruitful for you. If you have plans for travel, long or short distance travel, then yes, you can go for that. You will enjoy your travel, right? Now coming to the last sign of Pisces or Meena Rashi, this transit is happening in your second house, right? Which means the Rahu and Venus conjunction is happening in the second house, and Venus holds the third and the eighth houses. It's a lot of the third and eighth house, right? So from the time Rahu has come into the second house, you can see that your relationship with your family, which includes your extended family, might have been impacted, right? So already there are certain differences which you might be seeing with your extended family, and you already have become little aggressive in dealing with them. You might have your own reasons which might be quite legitimate, but still, when Venus comes and joins there, then your feelings might actually flare up, and then you might actually damage your relationships even more, because Venus is a lot of your third house communication, and it is in a way it is 12 from the third house, which means loss of communication, and which means instability in communication. And when it comes in a fiery sign with Rahu, then that dominance of Mars and Rahu is expressed through the communication with your extended families, and this is going to impact a relationship with them. So be very careful, right? At least for this 20 days, 25 days, you have to be very careful. Don't get into arguments with them. If at all there are any differences with the ancestral properties, then just relax. This is not the period where you actually want to get into all those things, and don't get into investment during this period. If you get into investing your savings, then you can expect that they would be kind of stuck somewhere for a long period of time, right? You have to be very careful with your savings. You might have to spend on certain unexpected events, because Venus is also a lot of your 8th house, which indicates certain sudden unexpected things, and you might have to put in your savings into certain sudden unexpected things. So be careful even while driving. There are chances of small minor injuries, so be very careful with that. So guys, this was my take on the transit of Venus into the sign of Aries and the conjunction of Rahu and Venus, right? So if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. And after making the video of preparing oneself for Sadesati, I have got some mails and requests on making video of how to prepare oneself for Saturn Mahadasha, and it is quite interesting, and probably my next video would be on that. So subscribe to my channel and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much for watching.